Whiz Kids had won it, Bobby Thompson had done it, and Yogi read the comics all the while. Rock and roll was being born, marijuana we would scorn. So down on the corner, the national pastime went on trial. Talking baseball, Platuski Campanella, talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber, and the Duke. They knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Well, Casey was winning.
I always love hearing this song,
One Robbie going out,
especially in February going into March.
Kiner and Midget Goodell, the Thumper and Bill Parnell. And Ike was the only one winning down in Washington. I'm talking baseball. Platuski Campanella, talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber, and the Duke. They knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Now my old friend, the bachelor, well, he swore he was the Oklahoma kid. And Cookie played hooky to go and see the Duke. And me, I always loved Willie Man.
Those were the days, guys. Those were the days. Talking baseball here on a Sunday morning. Gotta let the song play, though.
Well, now it's the 80s, and red is the greatest.
If you're listening to me, you know I'm a sports fan. You know I love my baseball.
Rose is at the vet. Rusty again is a Met.
God, those were the days of baseball, man.
Again in Washington. I'm talking baseball. Like Reggie Queens and Dead. We're talking baseball. Carew and Gaylord Perry. Seaver, Dog, and Schmidt, and Ryder Blue.
You're not going to see players like these guys.
Down is calling, it's no fluke. They'll be with Willie,
Mickey, and the Duke. I know, like I said, I know if you like me, guys. You know when you hear this song, that means baseball season is almost upon us. That means the Super Bowl is over for all us sports fans. The only happy ones right now are Chiefs fans.
I'm talking Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. Say hey, say hey, say hey.
All right, everybody, and welcome to a late morning edition of the Murf and E-Dub show, minus E-Dubs for today. E-Dub said he's been feeling a little under the weather, and he's been running around doing a bunch of stuff. I know Jody's just starting to feel better. He's just kind of starting to get his life in order, and being that he is an accountant and then it's tax season, E-Dubs is doing his own taxes today, and I don't know what that means, but I know E-Dubs is gonna account for every single dollar. So don't write off the Murph and E-Dub show. We don't make any money on this thing yet. Well, anyway, I want to talk. Listen, I know everybody, football season's over. It's done. Football season is just one of those seasons that it comes and it goes in a flash. So that being said, when you do a sports talk podcast, like, obviously, I could come on and talk whenever I want, but I think for a lot of these guys in the sports talk world, it's kind of hard for them to find something to talk about. And I guess if you've been in that sports talk world for a really long time, you don't want to revisit certain subjects. You don't want to, you just want to give out new content all the time. Well, luckily, me and E have only been doing this for a year and a half. And I want to talk about the Negro Leagues today because if you guys know me, I'm up really early. The family went out skiing today. The girls took all the boys. So my wife went with our friend Kara and the kids, and we stayed home. So I got some time on my hands before I get my honey-do list going, and I'm going to talk to you about the Negro Leagues baseball, because if you guys don't think that, if you're baseball fans and you don't think that at the end of the day, after all this stuff's been spoken about, your Jackie Robinson days, your players, your contrast players, everything that happened with Jackie Robinson and everything that happened with Jackie Robinson after, if you don't think that it was the plan to leave black baseball players out of baseball because of the fact that they were afraid that these players from this other league. And at that time, racism was at its highest. It was, the Jim Crow days. And, I think America was, starting to, really come into form. And we really started off on a real racist foot. I mean, thinking that, we're here and there's these different people here and they must be not smarter than us. They must be not, they must not be able to compete with us because, we're not going to let them play baseball with us. We're not going to let them go to jobs with us. We're not going to let them eat with us. We're not going to let them go to bathrooms with us. So we started off as a country on a wrong foot when it came to race relations. And today, everybody says it's getting better, but I don't know, man. And there's just certain things that are still going on in the world that, race relations are still very, very far from being, I guess you could say from being settled. But I'm going back to a time now where, I honestly think that if you go back then, like a lot of these baseball players, I really do think that they were left out of baseball purposely because of the fact that they would have equaled their white counterparts in the major leagues, or B, would have been better than them. I mean, there's just there's stats and signs and stories of all these great players, and the Satchel Pages, and all these players, and these guys have become like legends in that era. And me and E-Dubs I know E-Dubs is a fan of the Negro Leagues as well. I mean, I just wanted to touch on one specific thing, but there's so much history to be spoken about this subject. And I know E is a plethora of knowledge on that subject. So I'm just going to talk for one specific instance that I saw this morning that I guess, you always know the story, but you don't know the story. So maybe some people do, some people don't. Now, if everybody thinks I'm going to come on here, I'm going to tell you a story about Jackie Robinson. Well, the story I'm going to tell you starts with Jackie Robinson, but everybody knows about Jackie Robinson, right? Everybody also knows the fact that Jackie Robinson probably wasn't chosen by Branch Rickey just out of the blue because he was the best player in the Negro Leagues. If you listen to the stories and you listen to what was going on at that time, taking the temperature of what was going on, you could go way back to 1878. Now, I jumped back to 1878. I was going to tell you about Jackie Robinson, but there is no Jackie Robinson if it wasn't for back in 1878. Now, 1878, as we know, is everybody's got their opinions, or, not even opinions, historical facts of where the first baseball game was played. Okay, so baseball came into, around the 1860s. Let's just say my baseball fanatics and they yell at me and say, give me certain dates. I could be 10 years off, whatever. It's around the mid 1800s. But this specific thing happened in 1878. There was a baseball player by the name of Bud Fowler. Now, Bud Fowler was a black baseball player. And at the time, they're still figuring stuff out as a country because, I love the way Joe Rogan likes to put it. Joe Rogan likes to say that our country is 4 people old. And when you think about it, there's still a lot of crazy shit going on that makes a lot of dumb people. And, when he says that we're 4 people old, it really puts into perspective a lot of stuff that is still going on. So 1878, first black baseball player is allowed, I guess they say in the story, to play with white baseball players. Okay. This is 1887. Now, fast forward to 1878. Now, fast forward to 1887. Now, 1887, there's a man named Cap Anson. Now, I guess at the time, Cap Anson is, I guess they probably used this term in that day. He was, I guess you would say, the cat's meow. He was the best baseball player at the time. Everybody showed up to go see this guy play. Don't know much about him. Me and E are going to have to do a little research on him so I could talk about it. But all I know is Cap Anson made a big deal and said, you know what? I am not playing with Bud Fowler. Bud Fowler is black, I am white, and we should not be playing together. So what does Major League Baseball do, or whatever they called it at the time? They said, you know what? Cap Anson doesn't want to play with this guy, so no one's going to play. So the black baseball players, unfortunately, and there was many of them, had to go and find another outlet to play. So at a certain point in time, this is going on, in like the late 1800s. You got the early 1900s where, the Negro Leagues are starting to flourish now. Okay, now there's a lot of players down there that are playing well. It's like it's starting to become a big thing. People are starting to watch it. Now there's a reporter back in the day. His name was Wendell Smith. Now Wendell Smith was a black journalist who, if you wanted to know what was going on in the Negro Leagues back then, Wendell Smith was the man that would be talking about it. He gave you all the news, all the teams, who was playing well. He gave you the stats. Obviously digging at the fact that these players are playing at such a level that why is there a separation in baseball? It's like there should be, everybody should be playing together. If you look at what's going on, because there was an obvious, not separation because of talent. There was an obvious separation because of the fact that I still think that the white baseball player was afraid to let them delve in because they would have gotten either outshined or they would have seen that they were comparable baseball players to what was going on at the time. So you could thank Cap Anson for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, almost 60 years of keeping black men out of baseball, and probably about 60 years of watching players that are just urban legends because of the fact that they had to play in the Negro Leagues. There really wasn't much press going on unless you were listening to this guy, Wendell Smith. Now, a lot of stuff happened in between then. Okay, we could go into the history of what happened. We could go into this, we could go into that. Let's just say in the 1920s, the Negro Leagues are flying. They're packing out the stadiums. People are going crazy. They're seeing home runs. They're seeing a different style of baseball. They're seeing a fast style of baseball. They're seeing, bunting, stealing. They're seeing like tracking fast balls down. You go fast forward and go to the other side. You see the home runs being hit. You got your Babe Ruths. You got these guys that hitting home runs, smashing them. It's like everybody's, you got Murderers Row. You got these guys are legendary baseball players, but still, as I say, and I still think these guys are legendary baseball players. But if they had to go up against players that were comparable to their talent level in the Negro Leagues, I don't know what would have happened. Let's say they might have shined. They might not have. Let's just see what the competition would have been like. Maybe it might have left other players out that were almost as good, but maybe weren't. But needless to say, history. Bad things happen in history. Good things happen in history. At the end of the day, history is a learning experiment, a learning, whatever. You learn a lot from history, whether it be good or bad. Like I said, the whole statue thing. I could go into the whole thing with people tearing down statues. Why are you tearing down statues? What do you want to erase stuff that existed? We sucked a long time ago as a country. We did. It just what it is. It is what it is. Now, I don't think that if you're somebody of a different persuasion who had a rough time a long time ago, I don't think that there should be any statues taken down as a representation of that, because we should look at that as Americans and be ashamed about us, what we did back then. Whereas don't erase it. Know that we came from a place, and let's go back to what Joe Rogan says, 4 people old, 1776. That's not a lot of time. There's a lot of dumb rules that were made. There was a lot of dumb mistakes. There was a lot of stuff that was done back then that a lot of people probably look back on and were embarrassed of. Maybe some of the people that didn't look back on embarrassed. KKK was really bad back then. Do all of those guys think that they were wrong? I would hope so, but you never know. So this is a time when the race relations were really bad. There was no, it was really those bathrooms. These guys, they couldn't just intermingle with white people. Okay. And this isn't even, I'm going to talk about this is just the 1920s. Okay. So we're going to go into the history of all that and all that stuff that happened. But let's go fast forward to 1942. Now, 1942 is a year. We all know what happened in the 40s. World Wars. We had a lot of baseball players go away. DiMaggio, Ted Williams. You name your favorite baseball player from your favorite team. Maybe somebody had to take some time off. As a matter of fact, I think Ted Williams did 2 tours. Okay, so now let's fast forward now and go to 1942, where you got this guy Wendell Smith again. And this guy again, he's speaking out about he wants everybody to integrate. He wants the baseball. He wants black players and white players to play together, because you look at what you're missing here. You got all these great players. So they get together and they have a conversation. Now, in comes Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is a great player. He's a good player. I mean, if you look at the legends, if you look at the documentaries, you look at the stories, I wouldn't be able to rank them 1 to 20, 1 to 10, whatever it may be. But I'm assuming that there were better players in the Negro Leagues at that time. Not to take anything away from Jackie Robinson, because he changed baseball, stealing home and all that stuff. Okay. But I think what they came to terms with, they said that Jackie Robinson was probably one of the most resilient, maybe, or maybe he could take what was going to be said to him. Now, I'm watching this documentary this morning, and this documentary is talking about, and this is bad. I mean, if we know our history, it was bad. They would hear the N-word all the time. And I could not even explain from my perspective of how that must have felt, or how that would have went down back then, or how to be singled out and yelled and screamed at and called all sorts of names because of the color of my skin. I mean, back then, come on, man. I mean, today, again, still to this day, we still have those problems. But that's neither here nor there. But it was because they had different color skin. Now, I went to a point where a lot of these coaches in the Major League Baseball literally thought that these guys couldn't play because they literally weren't smart enough. They didn't have enough education. They were trying anything just to keep these players out of baseball. Again, Branch Rickey, Wendell Smith, these two came up with the name Jackie Robinson. Okay, so Jackie Robinson comes into baseball in 1947. Now, we all know the story of Jackie Robinson, what he went through, what he did. He endured a lot of stuff. Philadelphia, that must have been a hell of a place to go for a guy like Jackie Robinson in the late 40s and the early 50s. I mean, I couldn't even imagine the heinous shit that was said to them back then. But you know what, though? I guess Branch Rickey and Wendell Smith were right. He endured to a point. Now, every man, if you listen to the Shooting the Breeze podcast, if you listen to me talk, every man has a breaking point. Every man has that point where they've just had enough. Every man has morals. Every man has standards, and every man looks at another man, and we hold each other accountable. And if we see things that are going on, that we're holding you accountable. So my life was a living hell because of white baseball. I was let in, I was let to play, but that didn't take anything away from the fact that I was still being looked at by the color of my skin when it comes to baseball. I was still being looked at as a guy that when I went to cities, I couldn't stay with the team. I couldn't eat in the same places. I couldn't sleep in the same hotels. I'd have to go see the local guy, go to the minor leagues. It's even going on into the 50s. I'm going to tell you a story about where that broke. And that took up until 1960, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to look at my notes until that stigma was stigma wasn't broken, but one team kind of broke the whole, it's a camaraderie thing with baseball. And I'm going to tell you about that, like I said, in a second. But he endured so much as being that first Black person to play baseball. Now, 1955, he comes to a point where he's getting a little ornery. It's starting to piss him off. He's starting to hear that word over and over and over again. He's starting to get death threats. Not starting. He's had death threats his whole life. He's had, threats on his family. And this is all because a Black guy wanted to play baseball. Now, if you think that this back then was just about baseball, again, I'm just going to say it again. You're not paying attention, because this is what was going on. This was the temperature of America at that time. A lot of people have grown from then. Some have not grown from them. And it still embarrasses me to this day what people have not grown from that. But he starts to be known as a guy that's to be a troublemaker. He starts to be known as a guy who's going to speak his mind. He starts to be known as a guy that's just pissed off that he can't go to the bathroom in the same bathroom as his teammates. Look, they're winning games. They're kicking ass. Most of those games, Jackie Robinson is the best player on the field. Guy stealing home. I know I keep talking about that, but stealing home is something that they were doing like crazy in the Negro Leagues. So there's a different form of baseball. And maybe, like I said, you could go to this time when somebody says this rule is changing. And all the old-time baseball players are like, I'm not changing any rules. But they change. But again, this is not a long period of time when you think about the perspective of the time period that I am talking about when it comes to this. So now, I just got distracted for a second. Okay, so now the time period that I'm talking about, I'm still talking about Jackie Robinson. Now, Jackie Robinson had his ordeal. Now, the documentary that I watched this morning was about Curt Flood. It was about Curt Flood, Bob Gibson, and my man, Frank White. Okay. Was it Frank White? Let me go back to my Frank White. Why do I call him Frank White? I'm thinking of that movie, Bill White. Now, 1955. 1955 was a time. Now, I'm going to say something right now, and you're going to be like, this happened in like the 1800s, or this happened in like 1900. 1955. Rosa Parks says, I am not sitting in the back of the bus. Made songs about it. She's a legend. She's a hero. But at the time, she wasn't a hero. Montgomery, Alabama. People went down there. They spoke. Martin Luther King was arrested. Now, think for a second. Think about this time frame for a second. Rosa Parks was arrested for sitting in the back of the bus 70 years ago. 70 years ago. Just let that resonate for a second. 1956. Jackie Robinson was traded to the Giants. He's no longer. He's more of a burden to the team. Why is he still spouting off the mouth about what's going on? He's causing problems. Just trade him. Jackie Robinson says, you know what? I don't want to be traded. He's going to quit baseball. He left baseball, as they say, I don't know how true it was, as the most hated man in baseball. Why? Because he wanted to stay in the same hotel? Because he wanted to drink from the same fountain? Because he wanted to be looked at as a human being like other people? This is why he becomes an activist in 1956. To this day, guys, we still have that racial divide in this country that for some reason can't get over it. Now, 1956, okay? I mean, there's players that you could think of, you could talk about. You could talk about Frank White, you could talk about Ernie Banks. You could talk about all sorts of players. But these guys that were talked about this morning was Bob Gibson, Curt Flood, and Bill White. Let me say these names again. If you're a baseball fan, if you're a fan of the Murph and E-Dub show, there's one guy on this list that I had the utmost respect for. He's a baseball player, as a human being now. I mean, I've seen documentaries on. Bob Gibson is one of the greatest pitchers to ever pitch. I'm going to say it again. One of the greatest pitchers ever to pitch. Won game 7s for his team. Beat the Yankees when they were a team where we're not going to look at this kind of baseball. We're going to look at this fast baseball. Oh, Brock stealing bases? Jesus Christ. But anyway, this is the kind of baseball that they're seeing now. Bob Gibson is one of the greatest baseball players to ever pick up a baseball. It was his. The inside of the plate was his, and it didn't matter who you were. And you know where that comes from? It comes from all the hate that these guys were still enduring. Now, all that hate did not stop at Jackie Robinson. It didn't, guys. I mean, the Cincinnati Reds looked at their team, and they thought they had too many black guys on the team. So they traded Curt Flood. So now you're looking at a team, you got the St. Louis Cardinals, okay? St. Louis Cardinals, now they have Curt Flood, they got Bob Gibson, they got Bill White, and they're a team that is looked upon as a team that's going to say, you know what? We're going to switch up the game of baseball. But unbeknownst to them, they have I guess you call him a coach that didn't feel the same way as maybe Branch Rickey felt, or maybe other players that thought that black baseball players are going to be competitive in the league. And Kirk Gibson was used as a Kirk Gibson. Why do I call him Kirk Gibson? Bob Gibson was used as a reliever. Curt Flood didn't play much. I guess he played left field. I don't even know. I know he didn't play much. Mr. White there didn't play much either. Team doesn't do so well. They think the stigma's on them. These 3 players are there. They're saying, listen, we are going to make a stand. It's like, you know what? This is how our team is going to be done now. We got a guy that doesn't know how to utilize his players. We're going to fire the coach. So Sully Hamas gets fired because he has the tools, he has the players, but he just doesn't know what to do with them. Hire a guy named Johnny Keane. Now, you want to take a turn in baseball? You want to take something that where baseball took a turn for the better? Or you know why the small ball is here now? You know why the bunts are here? You know why the base stealing is here? Because Johnny Keane took a David and beat a Goliath. Fast forward a couple of years, Johnny Keane right now is the head coach of the St. Louis Cardinals. Bob Gibson's a starting pitcher now. Curt Flood becomes a center fielder, moves on to be probably one of the best defensive center fielders in the league. That's going to be very poignant to something that happens to Curt Flood a couple of years later. Bill White, outfielder, becomes a great outfielder. These 3 guys competed. They were great players, but still, you're going down to the Jim Crow South. You want to go to spring training. Spring training's down south, guys. Spring training's in Florida. This is the time. This is 1960. This is 1960. Okay. St. Pete, Florida. St. Louis Cardinals. That's their home of their spring training. That is the home of, everybody goes down there. Fort Lauderdale, because it's cold up here in the Northeast, where they're going to have spring training. Guys got to leave their jobs and go show up for spring training to play baseball. What do they want to go to, like a gym? No, they all go down south, nice hot weather, plus racism. Okay. This is 1962 now, guys. Okay. Now, 1962. Wait, let's go back to this for a second. We need to talk about this first. Okay. I'm sorry. We got to go back here for a second. Okay. Spring training thing. Now, St. Louis Cardinals, here we go, 1960. In 1960, okay, all the Cardinals stood together and thought that it was crazy that down in spring training, you had these 3 players on the team and they still can't stay in the same place. They still have to eat in different restaurants. They still have to do everything different than the white players do. So the guy that owns the team, the Bush family, was pressed to buy a hotel, I guess, or to buy a hotel chain. So you know what, though? Everything changed after that, okay? It's 1960, okay? 1960, the whole team's staying together. Everybody's eating together. They're all going to the bathroom. They're all doing everything together. They're going to the same places together. Team camaraderie, okay? That's what everybody thought was missing. You have all these awesome athletes coming from the Negro Leagues, but they couldn't stay in the same places. They couldn't eat the same food. They couldn't go to the same bathroom, shower, do anything that human beings are supposed to do. They could not do it in the same place. So, listen, you guys know baseball. I know baseball. Baseball's all about camaraderie. Baseball's all about trusting that guy, the pitchers, the catchers, the center fielder. Okay, the pitcher's gonna respect his fielders to make the play. Okay, when you're not doing things during spring training after work, camaraderie goes right out the window. You start mistrusting people. You start looking at people like, why is this guy here and that guy there? So everybody in 1960, St. Louis Cardinals training camp, it was so bad that the Yankees up and left and went to Fort Lauderdale. They were like, what's going on here? Okay. And fast forward to the point that the Yankees were one of the last teams to have, they had one black player on that 1964 team that lost to the Cardinals. One of the last teams to integrate. Okay. They left, went to Fort Lauderdale. Okay. Now, I know I jumped ahead a little bit because now you're looking at Scott Hemus. Scott Hemus, did he not play those guys because they were black? Probably. In come Johnny Keane. Johnny Keane makes all these guys starters. It's 1962 now. Okay. 1962. Kurt Flood is on the Cardinals at the time. Jackie Robinson goes to a rally in Mississippi. Okay. Brings Kurt Flood with him. He invited all 3 of them, but Kurt Flood said, you know what? I'm going to come. Okay. Jackie Robinson says in this speech in Mississippi that white people are going to look back at this time and realize the damage that they've done to the country. Now, he's probably right. Where this started, that we have to look at each other as a different color or whatever, started somewhere. Started a long time ago. And it's like one of these things. It's like one of the snowball effect. I don't know. You guys know how I feel about things. I think that me personally, I've grown as a human being 50 years of my life. Okay. I see empathy. I see sympathy. I see things in different ways in my life now that I'm older. Okay. Shit was messed up in this country. It was fucked up. Okay. And you can't pinpoint it. Everybody could say it went wrong here. Everybody could say it went wrong there. But I think when people just started looking at each other, no matter what it may be, black or white, different, Spanish, different, American Indians, Native Americans, difference is we look at stuff that we could see as different. We don't look at we can't see what's inside of somebody. So inside of somebody is blood. What we can see is the color. And a lot of us are scared of color. A lot of us are scared of change. A lot of us are scared that there's more people in a pool that might be more successful than us. And that could go both ways. That could go making it easier for one side and harder for another. But all this is because of whatever happened years and years and years ago. And somebody looked at another person and said, you're different. So I have to come after you and I have to hate you. Now, go back to the Bible. You know, I'm not a religion guy. I had one of my biggest arguments with somebody when I told them that my opinion about Jesus, if he really existed, that Jesus was black. He was of dark tone, dark skin. Okay. Again, people have religious arguments with this because color of the skin. Now, I'm not going to try and figure out racial relations in one day. I really did think that this story that I'm about to tell you now needs to be told. And I needed to preface it by talking about Jackie Robinson. And I needed to preface it by talking about Bud Fowler. I need to preface it by talking about Branch Rickey, Wendell Smith, and all these other guys that had very, very strong hand in making baseball the game it is today. Now, 1964, okay, Lou Brock comes to the league, okay? Now, this Cardinals team they're on the verge, man. They're playing better. They're a team that they're playing different baseball than everybody's used to. You have your New York Yankees on the other side, tearing it up in the American League, hitting home runs, bang, bang. You got Kurt Flood chasing down fly balls, bunting the ball. You got Lou Brock stealing. Bob Gibson pitching complete game shutouts. It's striking out 17 players in playoff games. I mean, the guy is amazing. Bob Gibson just taking everything. Now, when I tell you three different perspectives, okay? Three different perspectives. Kurt Flood, I'm going to go the route of, I'm going to let everybody know how angry I am about this, which is the way to go. Bob Gibson took all of that. Bob Gibson took that. He put it in his heart. He left it there. And as soon as he grabbed that baseball, he looked at that field and says, none of you motherfuckers think I'm supposed to be here. And he went out there and became one of the most dominating players to ever pick up a baseball. He said one time in an interview that if somebody looked at me on the pitcher's mound and pointed to center field or wherever or whatever, maybe it's a myth, maybe it's not, whatever Babe Ruth did, he said, I would throw the ball and hit him right square in the head. Babe Ruth would have never done that to Bob Gibson. Okay. Now, that's what he brought to it. Bill White brought a lot of other things. Okay. He became one of the first black executives. Okay. He became an activist too in his own mind. Hold on. I gotta answer a text here. The stuff that he has done in his life was amazing. He also became the first black broadcaster. Now, Yankee fans, you remember that. Now, Yankees were one of the last teams to integrate. First to hire Bill White as an announcer. Okay. Now, this 1964 Cardinals team. Okay. Now they were not doing too well in the first part of the season. Okay. Now let's go. Okay. 1964 Cardinals. Okay. They're not doing so good. They have a resurgence because everybody is playing hard. Tim McCarver is behind the plate catching Bob Gibson. We always forget about Tim McCarver, announcer for the Mets. Old timers know him as an amazing catcher. Was able to catch Bob Gibson. Was able to take all the slurs and all the cursing and all the I'm going to kill you from Bob Gibson. And they had a great relationship. This team was ready to rock and roll. This team had a resurgence in 1964. And you know where they went? To the World Series. You know who they went against? The New York Yankees. The Mickey Mantle New York Yankees. We all know what happened there, guys. But I want to explain it in my terms. Okay? The Yankees were supposed to murder these guys. Mickey Mantle. Come on, guys. I'm a Mets fan, and I know Mickey Mantle was one of the greatest home run hitters ever to pick a baseball bat. This guy was incredible. Okay? 1964. They play a game 7. Bob Gibson pitches. I'm not going to save you guys all the ups and downs, but you know what, though? The Cardinals, the base-stealing Cardinals, how can we let so many black players play on the one-team Cardinals? The underdog Cardinals beat Mickey Mantle and the mighty Yankees. Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle went down to the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964. I wasn't alive then, okay? Wish I would have been able to see that. I wish. Okay. Bob Gibson. I mean, come on, man. How do you minimize what Bob Gibson did? It's just unbelievable. So now 1964. Okay. This guy's a World Series champions. Kurt Flood says, you know what? I'm going to buy a house. I'll buy a house in California. I don't know if he bought the house, he rented it, but they said, you know what, Kurt Flood, you can't buy a house in California. Why? We all know why. Why? sued, was able to get the house anyway, lived in the community, and to no avail. He's being, again, death threats. What are you doing? So at this point in time, he's still playing with the Cardinals. Okay. He's enduring all this stuff. He's becoming like an outspoken against, about equality guy. He's becoming a problem, as they say. So his kind of story is a little tragic and not. I mean, if you think about it, tragic in the beginning is when he tried to come back. Okay. And it was 1971. And he tried to come back. And after 20 games, he said, I can't do this anymore. His body just couldn't do it anymore. And he was the guy that back in 1968 or 69 started making noise about we're human beings. We're human beings. Nobody owns us. Now, when I say own us, I guess you can look at it as like, however you want to look at it. You're not allowed to go anywhere. There's no contract. You have to play till this time, and then you can do whatever you want. But now you can't leave. Kurt Flood said, wait a second. I'm a human being. I want to be traded to another team. I want to go somewhere else. I want to be able to go to another team and see what they have to offer. Call that modern day free agency, right? But believe it or not, up until that point, and it still didn't work, even for Kurt Flood. It still didn't even work for him. I mean, it's like and none of his players backed him. Okay, that was another thing. None of the players in 1972 backed him. And again, they had their own reason. This happened in 1972. I guess they had their own reason. They asked Bob Gibson why. Bob Gibson said he was doing what he was doing in baseball. He had his back, but from 30 steps away. I guess, Hank Greenberg came to him. Jackie Robinson and Bill Veeck. Sorry, guys, don't know who Bill Veeck is. I should. I know Hank Greenberg and I know Jackie Robinson. Kurt Flood thought he was making a mistake by doing what he was doing. He thought, wow, maybe I am a troublemaker. But you know what, though? Jackie Robinson, 1972, hobbling to the stand, told him to keep fighting. It's all Kurt Flood had to hear from Jackie Robinson. He was close to death when he said this to him, guys. He said, keep fighting. That, for Kurt Flood, was enough to, in his head, say, you know what? I'm trying. So Kurt Flood, I don't think, got a chance to see exactly what he did for baseball and free agency this day because I think let's see here. I got to look into it a little bit, but maybe we'll talk about that with E-Dubs. But the 1964 Cardinals story, I hope that I explained it good to you guys. It's because it's the story of, you hear the Jackie Robinson stories, and we're going to talk about other Negro League stories, but the 1964 Cardinals is very poignant because the style of baseball was changed. Not the way these players were being looked at as human beings, which slowly, the 1980s, there was a lot more black players in Major League Baseball. But that time period, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to say it again, this is 60 years ago, 70 years ago. And that is how the thought process was. And believe it or not, the thought process among a lot of people in this country hasn't progressed past that. Because at the end of the day, we still look at each other from being different from what you are. Doesn't matter what it is. It's color, it's sexual orientation, it's whatever it may be. I guess worry about yourself. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And I don't have much faith in the fact that that it's going to change anytime soon. Because as racism is inherent in some people on one side, the fight against racism or the fight against equality the fight for equality, I think has become harder because the people on the left are pushing an agenda that is so far out of whack. And the right is coming back with answers that are so far against the left that everybody's like, I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe you just said that. When at the end of the day, there's no discussion about what really can talk, what real points can happen, what real dialogue and optics can look like if everybody would have just shake your hand and say, "What's up, dude?" And not if you not like somebody, say, "Oh, he doesn't like him just because he's a white guy." Oh no, he doesn't like him just because he's black. Or he doesn't like him just because he's a homophobe. Or he doesn't like him because he's Spanish. No, there's a lot of people in this world, me included, that like a lot of people, dislike some people. And my dislike for people is because I shook their hand, I looked at them, and you know what? I don't like this person. Nothing else because of the fact that I had a conversation, whatever it may be. But never you're gonna look at somebody and judge person because he's purple and I'm green, and he must be not think like me. So there's so many stories like this in major leagues. There's so many stories like this in the NFL. There's so many stories like this in hockey. There's so many stories like this in life itself. We have to start talking to each other, guys. We have to start realizing that as much as the government, as much as everybody in this world wants to say we're different, we're not as different as everybody makes us out to be. We just look at people who tell us that we're different. And it's up to you to make that decision whether our differences are going to make sense or our differences are not going to make sense. But I think where we are right now, the temperature of this is, I don't know. I guess we're trying, but it's not in a good place right now. So I want to tell you that story. I also want to tell you a story about the number 42. And this is going to be quick, and this is where I'm going to end. Now, I don't know if anybody knows, but in 1997, two guys, Bud Selig ultimately had the final say in this. Bud Selig said nobody else is going to wear the number 42 in baseball. Gotta. Jackie Robinson, he did great stuff. I know I've said, I mean, if you'd play in a drinking game right now and every time Murph says Jackie Robinson, you take a drink, you guys will be hammered right now. So I know I said his name a lot. Number 42 was retired from baseball for good in 1997. 2007, April 15th, Ken Griffey Jr. It's a 50-year anniversary of Jackie Robinson playing his first game in the major leagues. I'm sorry, not in the major leagues, because back then, baseball, MLB, whatever you want to call it. Ken Griffey Jr. says, I want to wear the number 42. At this point, during that game, it was retired. It was this day, the number was retired for life, and it was also asked by Ken Griffey Jr. if he can wear it, and they'd make an exception on that day. So on the day that the number was retired for life, Ken Griffey Jr. asked to wear that number. And you know what? He did. Next year, a couple more black players wear the number 42 as a tribute. Okay. It's not only until 2009 where everybody in Major League Baseball put the number 42 on to remember not only Jackie Robinson, but to remember a place where Mookie Betts and Mike Trout were not even allowed to stay in the same hotel room. Think about that, guys. All right, this is Murph from the Murph and E-Dub Show. I hope you liked our quick little talk about the Negro Leagues. And me and E-Dubs will be back real soon. And I'm also trying to get Josh on real soon, too. So enjoy your Sunday, guys. And I got a list of stuff I got to do now. So I'm going to post this, and I'm going to be on my way. Thanks a lot for listening to me, guys. And I'll talk to you soon. Later.